Hi everyone, this video is for section 7-5% application solved with equations. So the main crux of this section is going to be dealing with the equation method when working with application problems and percents. And what I'm referring to is that there's a certain structure that you can use in order to answer questions such as these. So that structure is going to be basically be the whole. Or in other words, if you need to think about it in other words, you can think of the base, or you could think of it as your starting value. So either of those three. And then we're going to do a multiplication times your percent. And what you want to note here is that the percent needs to be in decimal form. If you don't do that, your numbers are actually going to come out way bigger than you want them to. And when we multiply our whole number, or our base, or our starting value by a percent, that's going to result in a part. Specifically the part, or the value, or the amount that we are interested in. So, some really basic outlines of what this might look like. So we might have a problem such as 1,216 is equal to x times 3,555. So to begin, I want to go ahead and call out what each of these values is supposed to be. So the number that is isolated all by itself is the part, so I'm going to color code this. The 3,555 is going to be the whole value, or our starting value, or our base value. And then where the variable is sitting is going to belong to our percent. So in this particular problem, we're going to figure out what the percent is. So the goal is to get x alone. How do we get x alone if it is currently being multiplied by a number? What's the opposite of multiplication, or what will undo multiplication? So hopefully you're saying, well, division will do the trick. So what we do to one side, we must do to the other. So those will reduce. And if we get this division, so probably have a calculator handy for this one, our result is going to end up being something along the lines of 0.34205344459. That's what x is. So what I want to do here is, though, again, because I know that x is a percent, I want to go ahead and write this as a percentage. So at this point, that would be 34.205344459% is equal to x. And I apologize for jumping the gun, but hopefully you remember that if we want to convert a decimal into a percent, we need to send that decimal point back 2 spaces. And again, this is a little bit long and messy, so I'm going to round to the nearest tenth of my percent. So my final answer here should be 34.2, or 2/10 of a percent. Again, because if I want to round to the tenths place, I'm going to look at the number right next to it, and since it's a 0, that's going to tell me to keep the 2 as is. Let's take a look at another one. Say we have something like 84 is equal to 72 hundredths times x. In this case, what again we want to note here is that the 84 is representing the part. In this situation, it looks like the 72 hundredths. This is actually my percent. And if you're not sure why, we want to note that this is actually 72% converted into its decimal form. So our goal is to find out what the whole value, or our base value, or our starting value is. Again, when we approach this problem, we want to note that there's multiplication that's happening between our variable and our number. How do we undo it? Well, again, we're going to undo it with a division. So if I were to divide both sides by 72 hundredths, 84 divided by 72 hundredths is going to give us a result of 116 with a 6 repeating. Okay, remember that on your calculator, if it ends in a 7, that's because your calculator is rounding that last 6 in order to make it stop and fit in your screen. But what we want to note is that it's actually going to be 6 repeating in each of those places after the decimal. So this is what x is. So in other words, to kind of put this into perspective, we can say that 72% of 116.6 repeating is 84. Again, here is our percent. Here is our starting value, or our whole value, or the base value that we're starting with. And here is our part, or our result. Let's do one more. Say that we have x is equal to 43% times 1,200. Now what I want you to do for a moment is pause the video and indicate which is the part, which is the whole, and which is the percent. I'm going to assume that you paused and that we're back. So the whole, or our starting value, or our base value, is our 1,200. Our percent is 43%. And in this case, it should be pretty obvious since it has the percentage sign next to it. And our part is going to be what we are figuring out. So it's, right now it's a variable, but we're going to uncover it. So before we actually start this problem, again, what I want to note is we want to convert 43% into its decimal form. So again, locate that decimal point and send it forward 2 spaces. That's going to give you 43 hundredths. And if you think of it, 43 hundredths is the same thing as, let me do that on the side, 43 hundredths. That's really saying 43 per cent. Again, cent is represented by 100. And we're multiplying this by 1,200. Well, again, if you use your calculator or if you try to use mental math, so breaking that 43% down into 4 10% and 3 1%. If we do this multiplication, we should get x is equal to 516. So again, what we are saying in this problem is 1,200 times 43% is 516. Or I guess another way that you could say that would be 43% of 1,200 is 516. So definitely take some time, look over the examples in the textbook, try out some of those homework problems now, and if you have questions, please let me know. There are going to be a series of other videos that are going to focus solely on word problems coming up next.